Do I need
So,
to?
yeah, just say you're Ruth Smith and go on.
Okay, so I'm Ruth Smith. Um, anyways, I have been working with Betsy on and off for about 10 years, 12 years, and on a variety of different projects. And my background is back in 2007, I worked with Casa de Belin with at-risk youth, and then went on to school, and then decided to get a degree because I couldn't tell the kids to go to school when I didn't have a degree myself. So I went in, got that the degree, and then I went on to work uh, with NeighborWorks Umpqua as a resident service coordinator. And so my job was to find resources for a multitude of individuals, over 1,000 people in 4 counties. And um, I recently retired. So now I need something to do. And so I'm back at working on trying to figure out homelessness. So that's where I'm at and what I'm doing and why I'm here.
Mine's Max. Larry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I'm Max Smoot. I'm from Roseburg, lived here most of my life. I started working with homeless at-risk youth in like 2011 when I moved back from Eugene after some college. And ever since then, I've just seen the problem kind of getting more ridiculous. Even back then, I noticed I was getting into it as the practical resources were being, cut away. And so seeing it, up till now, I just wanted to start, talking to people about more direct, active ways to remediate or, augment the issue on, a bigger scale. So, I figure a lot of people bipartisanly or unrelated to any political underlying ideology, people would be into getting some practical movement going on for this stuff. So I'm glad that Betsy and Ruth have taken up uh, some interest in the group, and I'm pretty sure this could be a pretty inclusive and positive thing for us in Redwood. So thanks, everybody. This is all we got.
Hi, I'm Linda Rawmeyer, and I'm a local citizen. Um, interested in, I have a long background in social services, and I'm interested in homelessness and how to try and resolve some of it here in Roseburg, and have been amazed at the lack of anything really positive moving forward. So I decided to come and listen in to what was going on with this group, since I don't have a lot of faith, unfortunately, in the Homeless Commission.
Just introduce yourself. Yep.
My name's Lori Stevenson. I'm actually disabled and get my housing through HUD, and I walk everywhere, so I've been able to kind of be around homeless people a lot that way. I've been really concerned with the way that the city's not handling it. I've gone to city council meetings. I'm hoping that people can figure out a way to help these people instead of keep hurting them.
And I'm Wayne Ellsworth. I'm a board member of Umpqua Heart, and I was part of the Hastings Village Initiative when it first started in 2021. The city of Sutherland, I'm the chair for the Homeless Transition Action Group again, because Janelle transitioned out of that spot. And I've been doing this work for about 10 years, 7 years as the outreach coordinator for ADAPT, but no longer working for ADAPT, and I'm just representing Umpqua Heart today.
So, Larry, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it sounds like you got a really nice group there. I'm Larry Wanavo. I moved here about 7 or 8 years ago from central Minnesota. I have a variety of backgrounds in banking, advertising, marketing, strategic planning, media, newspaper, radio, I'm 81 years old. That's how I got all that experience. So, but coming to Roseburg 7, 8 years ago, it was first experience I had with homelessness. I never saw it, certainly not to the degree that it is here on the West Coast. And that brings to mind some thoughts about why Washington, Oregon, and California aren't doing more collaboration on this issue because of the corridor, the highway that moves up and down. Then on to the strategic planning issue and what the Homeless Commission and I feel the council misses. They're starting in the middle. They're starting with this idea of a tent camp, and I don't think that's the place to start. In strategic planning, you begin with your goals, your vision, your mission, action steps, and it's quite a process. You get everybody to buy in, everybody participates, and therefore they're kind of committed. Here, it just seems like they're floating all over with this, spending a lot of time, wasting a lot of time on this tent camp idea when I think the plan needs to be much broader, much bigger, and much longer range when it comes to identifying who are we serving? Who are we trying to help? And I don't think there's enough research and data. Ms. Smith and the gentleman there from ADAPT probably knows where a lot of good factual data is on which decisions can be based. And the question is, how do we get that to the deciders? So anyway, my concern is that the city and the planning commission are kind of waffling around this one or two ideas, and I was inspired, I guess, or felt good when at the last planning commission, um, I believe and in fact, the council then rolled it out, 3 or 4 priorities, none of which was a tent camp. So, am I right on that, Betsy?
She's letting somebody in right now,
I believe.
but you are correct.
Okay, so I thought that was a step in the right direction, at least that I know that was addressed at the Homeless Commission, and I believe the council voted for it as well, didn't they?
You'd have to re-ask that again.
Anyway, I think that those 3 or 4 priority points were decided upon at the Homeless Commission, and they referred it then to the council, and I believe the council voted on it. Is that correct?
No, so there's the homeless commission or the commissioners, what they did is they've come up with some ideas that they still need to flush out. They only got about halfway done with what they were wanting to present to the council. So they'll be bringing that in to the next meeting, I believe. And then the council is also having a work session around um, around the homeless. And then all of that will be kind of brought to the next group or next council meeting.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. It was the it was the special work session that the Homeless Commission had in which they identified those 3 or 4 priorities. And that I think they already had that meeting.
Yeah, but I want to clarify, Larry, and with everybody, that our intent is not necessarily to do anything but move in a direction where the expertise in the room is, because there's a lot of us who have expertise about how this happens. I've been a homeless and housing advocate since the 1980s. There's a reason I started Housing First. There's a way to do this. There's just not a will. But we're in introductions, and let's go to Tina. Are you still online? And then we'll have Wayne talk about Hastings Village, and I think there's whoever else is in the room.
Yeah, I'm online. My name's Tina Dabowski. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm here mainly to listen, but also a little bit of backstory on why I'm particularly interested in homeless in our area. I moved here in 2015 back here. I used to live here before. I grew up in Wyoming, but I moved here with my child from a domestic violence situation. And I'm glad I had family here, privileged family here, because if I wouldn't have, I still lived in a trailer. I still lived homeless with my kid. And to live homeless and go to Glide High School where everybody has money, particularly, it's hard. And I have the experience of going to several nonprofits and not getting any help and being damaged from domestic violence. So I started with a nonprofit I was on, and we went down into the camps, and I saw what was there, and I'm still living paycheck to paycheck in a spot out of nepotism, and I think something needs to be done. I travel all over. I have the privilege of doing some things with ROP, Rural Organizing Project, and I've met with several different places where I see that community is the answer and community is the key, and caring about each other's wellness. But I just want to say I'm grateful to be here, and I'm happy to be in any intellectual discussion that is based on listening to and being led by the oppressed. That's about all I got.
Who else is, somebody else there online? There was. Oh, what's it? Is it Octavia? Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Octavia. Yeah.
Introduce
Um,
yourself.
my name my name is Octavia Sanchez. I have lived in Douglas County my whole life. I was born at Mercy Medical. In fact, I have a degree, an associate's degree from Uncle Community College, and I have a bachelor's of interdisciplinary studies, psychology, anthropology, and sociology from Eastern Oregon University. I'm an employee of Housing First Umpqua. I'm the outreach coordinator, actually, and I became interested in homelessness and homeless solutions when I realized that it could happen to anybody. That we pretend we're immune to these issues when we're not. And and seeing the people down at the point for me was very impactful because I thought that it was just the way they have to live is just it's so sad and horrible. And I just think of like it makes me think of classism and all and income inequality and how this wouldn't be happening if we invested more into our communities.
All right, Mary, you get to introduce yourself, and the camera's on.
Oh my goodness. My name's Mary Shikard and I work with Betsy Cunningham in the housing world Umpqua for a few years and I'm here to help and be with the people. I don't know what to say.
You want to introduce yourself? I said you want to introduce yourself. You're online.
Say hi.
Well, here's a group that I believe the people who need housing and this is a good group to get started, so stay along, we'll be doing more.
All right, so the guest and hopefully, future participant is Wayne Ellsworth. And so I'm gonna move the mic and the camera to him. And remember it's recorded. And it will be on YouTube.
The beautiful thing about me is if I say something, I stand behind it, but I'm not scared of talking about stuff. And, listening to Larry and stuff, being from the Midwest, policy is done a lot different over there. There's a lot of can-do attitude and there's a lot of just getting things done and, sometimes putting carts before horses. And that's where I learned how to do my way of doing things, which sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. But everything I'm going to talk about right now was from my experience. Um, and it's my truth. And I can give you guys information about what I believed worked, what didn't work. And I can also talk about what was done at city levels and how we were able to make things happen and why things didn't happen. But I won't be able to go into um, when it comes to other people creating this policy and why they did that because I wouldn't be able to give their perspective. So, in my experience, when it comes to the city of Sutherland came to me in late of 2020 in November because the city manager, Jerry, believed that he was going to get sued for the way that they treated homeless people because of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and the lawsuit that was put against the city of Grants Pass. So he didn't want the same thing. So what he did is he set aside a little chunk of land that was about an acre. It was actually 0.8 of an acre that was available for people to stay on that property. And it started out with 8 individuals. And he just did it without the consent of the city council, without knowing what it was going to cost, what partners were going to be there. But he was running directly on fear of something bad that could happen to the city. It just so happens that Jerry also had a heart for helping people in that situation. He wanted to be able to see people getting some kind of help and getting out of their situation. The way that it was situated, this chunk of property was right in a spot where there was a lot of houses, and every one of those houses quickly went online to let him know how bad of a person he was. So he worked with Commissioner Chris Boyce to be able to get a chunk of property that was on the outskirts of Sutherland, that was an old mill property that was deemed a wetland. And they weren't able to do anything permanent on that property. So it worked perfect for somebody that wanted to pitch up a couple tents. I called Jerry and said, I need to help you with this. He said, okay. We sat down, we created a group. It was myself, the city manager, the city recorder, and the newly appointed livability director that was also the director of the library. And at that point, we were able to help those 8 individuals locate to this property with the help of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The pastor at that time had it on his heart to be able to help people who are unhoused. So we were able to find tents, tarps, and sleeping bags, and a couple different churches with a couple different people to be able to help these folks. It soon turned into 18 people. And when it comes to tent camping initiative, what I have found that one person that's coordinating a living environment like this, which is a urban campground, 18 people is the sweet spot. It's a spot where you can help them be able to coordinate resources, be able to them to live independently and help each other. It turns into this small little community that's very, very beautiful. They were able to, and just for the sake of history, Hastings Village was an initiative like the Safe Ground Initiative, where they built their own rules and they were self-governed. They had 6 specific rules, and it was passed through the city council. Everything was fine, that it was self-governed at the time. And really what the rules were this: don't touch anybody else's stuff. No physical violence whatsoever. No hurting city property or Umpqua Hart property. That's pretty much what I can remember. But there was only 6 rules. It was very, very simple. And we made a little placard. We put it on the fence on the outside. Soon it went up to 28 people. Don't know why. It's just all of a sudden the police department started shipping in people that were on the highways that were coming in from other areas. They were finding other places where people were residing, and they were telling them to relocate to this place because now they had a place for the ways and time, place, and manner, where they had a place where people could stay, and they knew that they were getting services. So we quickly worked with Adapt, HIV Alliance, UCAN, who else? There's a Work Source, Easter Seals, and a couple of other places to be able to establish it as a connecting point initiative, where on every Friday, all of those resources would be there between a specific time to be able to offer direct access to whatever resources were there at the table, because it started becoming a little bit too big for me to handle on my own. Then the city government found out that there was an old doctor's office that was right across from Central Park, that the owner was allowing people to live in that place, and it wasn't zoned for that kind of living. All of a sudden, Hastings Village went to 43 people in a response of a night. I was on vacation to Michigan. I didn't know this happened. I came back to this. So we found out that we had 43 people. At that point, we were able to write a small grant to the Greater Douglas United Way, and we were able to receive some funds to be able to buy tents and be able to build 2 tiny homes for people that would wanted to participate in Umpqua Heart's kind of transitional plan, which was a step process. The step process would be that the people, and again, the people that lived at Hastings were the ones that were doing the intake for these people, collecting the data, and making sure that the people had the resources they need. All I was doing was being on the property. They were doing the work. So as a person would come in, they would receive a tent, tarp, and sleeping bag, and they would be able to stay on a 10 by 10 little chunk. And the next day, they would be able to be collected with the data assessment. We had a little kind of agreement, kind of contract that would say that this person would follow the rules during the time that they would stay there, and that if they wanted to be able to participate in our program. The next step would be moving into something that was a little more permanent. Since we didn't have any funds, and since the city didn't have any money to work on it, we built 10 by 10 pedestals because it was in a flood zone, which floods. And once it floods, the rats come out of the ground, makes another weird situation. But we would put 2 of those pedestals together, and we would put 10 by 20 Costco carports on them. By doing that, it created a more, I guess, easier place to stay, and we could put more people under them, and we didn't have to replace as many tents because we didn't have the money to purchase them, and people from like UCAN or public or private citizens would donate these tents to us. So we were running out of the funds to be able to buy those things. So we tried to create something a little more permanent. So at that point, then they would go from a tent, and then once they were put into wanting to transition, we would put them into this next step. We finished the 2 tiny homes. They were 10 by 12 tiny homes. They would cost me and my son built them. It took us 3 days to build one because they were just sheds. And we put in solar panels with battery backup and controllers that would be able to run a light in the building and be able to charge a phone or a laptop. So people that were in a spot that they were wanting to transition out of, then they would be in that tiny home. So they would go from tent to this other more stable thing to a tiny home, and then they would go into something more permanent. We ended up with using resident services from NeighborWorks Umpqua to house 6 people in the first year into places like Colhagen and the Grand. So we had really good partnerships that were housing some of our folks. And we were able to see 260, I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 260 unique individuals come through Hastings Village in that first year. And it was all from Douglas County, Coos County, or Josephine County. It was only meant to be for people of Sutherland. But it just so happens that if you say that you're from Sutherland and you're unhoused, then you're from Sutherland at that point. So we were able to help out a lot of people. So in that first year, we were able to apply for share funds through Umpqua Health Alliance. They gave us $100,000 to be able to expand on our program. The basis was that we would have to be able to give coordinated care through partnering agencies because Umpqua Heart has no employees. So we were able to establish partnerships to be able to offer that peer support through ADAPT and through HIV Alliance. We had to be able to establish water at the site because historically the people would have to steal water from the hose across the street. And when I mean steal, I use that very lightly. The neighbor allowed them to use the hose until they would mismanagement, and then he would kind of ground them from using the hose for a little while, and then he would allow them to use it again. So they had water across the street. So we installed water, the city installed water on the property. Then the next thing we had to do was have to supply electricity. So electricity was run to the property. In order to do that, they gave us $100,000 to build container housing for this property. So with us being Umpqua Heart, the city of Sutherland, and we purchased these from Haley, Haley's tractor, and they were put together by Great Northern Trailer, and the electricity was done by a local electricity company. So everything was 100% legit. It was 50-foot containers. They had 3 apartments in each of them that they had a door that they can lock, and they all had heating and cooling units in them. And we were able to build 3 of them for $100,000. It ended up being 78,000, and we used the rest of the money to be able to purchase tarps, the pedestals, and the 10 by 20 carports to be able to expand because we had so many people on the property.
That was 8 units.
9 units plus the 2 tiny homes, and I think we had 12 of those 10 by 20 carports. So we had a community there. And people were working pretty decently well together. Well, I'll get to the good, bad, and the ugly later. But when it comes to the community itself, the biggest thing that we found out in this situation, the biggest thing, and remember, this is all from my experience. The biggest thing that we found about doing this on this property is it gave a place for people to be. It gave them a place where they can be human the way that they need to be human. And it gave them supportive services in a way that those supportive services didn't have to go out and find people after they already established care. Because in Roseburg, historically, the conversations that I always had was we would establish care, and then the people that they established care with would have to migrate because of camp cleanups and policing and whatnot. So they would have to relocate, so they couldn't find them. By doing this, we had a continuity care plan where people actually were transitioning and they were getting services in a pretty equitable and inclusive way. So we were feeling really, really good about that. So that's probably the most beautiful thing. The next thing that we were able to do is we were able to establish an internal government where people took care of themselves. Again, it could only go to a point because what we missed out on was the mentorship of that government. We weren't able to put in the different relief valves for different situations that they might not be able to govern on their own because they lack the ability to be able to have that organized government and to be able to communicate with each other. So that's one thing that we missed out. The next thing that we found out that we weren't able to manage was trash. The biggest downfall of Hastings when I was running it, where I failed the most, was not being able to identify people that were collecting and being able to mitigate it in a way that was inclusive while showing the public that they could keep the place clean. Because that that outside appearance, that perceived value of having a property like that when it looks like garbage automatically makes people believe that it's garbage. And I was not able to mitigate that. By doing that, I was not able to put it in a place where it was socially acceptable among all people that were in Sutherland. And unfortunately, by that point, I had lost the, we'll say, the love of the city because the city manager gave everybody my cell phone number and they started fielding all of their homeless concerns directly through me. And there were some answers I was not able to do. So we'll take that in a second. We're going to go back to the things in this situation that we needed to be successful on, but then since losing some of that momentum, we weren't able to provide. We built all this stuff with the containers. We built all the stuff with the platforms and the homes. There was a lot of people staying there. As soon as one person complained about there being power on a wetland and making that more permanent, the city did not allow us to have any power. By not having power within those container units, our people who are unhoused are probably the most ingenuitive people out there. So they were able to find a way to use those heating units by splicing wires and hooking them up to generators for some. So all of the wiring that we invested in, which is a good chunk of money, whatever it was, 15 grand or whatever it was all gone because they were doing the ways that they only know how to do to survive is to make things happen. And then other people would use propane heaters inside of those, not being vented 100% properly because they're container units. The first thing that happened was condensation. They all molded out, every one of them completely. So within the first year, they were unsalvageable. So by not having that power when it was promised, set us back big time.
So if it had been solar energy, would there have been an issue?
Probably not, but it really depends. You'd have to put a lot of solar on it in order to run those air conditioners and heaters. There is a lot of land, but there was no money. I mean, we'll get to that because of grant funding. So anyway, we weren't able to do the things we needed to do because we lost that momentum and we lost that support from the city to be able to do the things that we said that we were going to do. So by doing that, we lost those container housing units. And since we lost those, for some reason they weren't, I had to give them away because I wasn't able to fix them. So I gave them to the city. Now one is used for storage over at the fire hall. Another one is used for storage at the baseball field. And there's one still on the hill that could be refurbished. Moving forward, we were looking for money to be able to support these kind of things, and we had a plan. The phase one was the tents. Phase two was the tiny homes, micro shelters. Phase three was going to be a home ownership model through tiny homes, and it was going to have a low income housing model where somebody could move in, and then eventually through peer mentorship and supports, they would eventually be able to pay rent. And we wrote a note to Senator Merkley, who funded us with $560,000 to buy a chunk of property that was at the end of Hawthorne, which is an old church. Those people in that area found out what we were doing. They all came to city council, and even though that money was going to Umpqua Hart to be able to do that, which takes it out of the city's hands, the city promised the people that they would never do that with that property. And it put us in a spot where Umpqua Hart couldn't do anything for that phase three. And then when it comes to 2023, we had to redo our contract with the city of Sutherland. And we put in there, in order for Umpqua Hart to be able to continue the services that it would need to, we would need $150,000 to be able to hire a director, hire community health workers, to be able to offer the supports and give the level of oversight that that place would need. I put it in the MOU. The city voted for it I think we had only 2 people vote against it. But then the contract came back to me with revisions saying that the 150,000 would have to be because of grant funding. If we got the grant funding, then they would pay Umpqua Hart to be able to do that. We weren't able to offer those services at that time because we all have full-time jobs and we weren't able to offer any more volunteer hours for that. And none of that grant funding ever came through.
So is
So we cut our ties.
actual cash or in kind of cash?
It was supposed to be actual cash
So it's cash.
To pay salaries.
to pay salaries, yeah, to be able to do the work. So that's kind of like, that was the good, bad, and the ugly. You have a good idea. Yeah, it does. It does. But I mean, when it comes to what, our side of the road, we were able to show people at least something that can happen in a beautiful way, make it inclusive. But there's a couple shortfalls that we had. And like I said, we couldn't raise any money for it for some reason. And we couldn't get the full support that we were promised. And a lot of it's my fault for being a really crappy businessman and not getting everything in writing. But at the same time, we were in building mode. We wanted to do something cool, and we helped out a lot of people. And by the tail end of it, it all came down to we could never get enough money to do it. We could never get a support to do it the way that we wanted to be able to do it. And now there's 13 people living there, and there's a person that's running it, and he abides by the rules 100%. And if you break one of the rules, you're cut out for 30 days, and we don't know if the people can actually come back or not. And the one thing that I remember from a city council meeting was when they asked Kurt Sorensen, who was the captain, who is now the city manager, come up and talk about Hastings. They found out after having Hastings that a majority of the crime that was happening in the town was not happening by homeless people. It was by other people that were in the town, and how much they loved and respected the fact that we were able to have this place where people can be, and that they were not overrunning the parks. They didn't have a problem with garbage. They didn't have a problem with vandalism. They didn't have a problem with needles. They didn't have this, this, and this. And now that I've not been in the picture for 2 years, somewhere around there, now there's people living around town. There's more people doing different things. There's more garbage all over town. And it was not like that for a very, very long time. And I think it's just because people had a place where they could feel safe. And, they had a place that they could call home, even if it was transitional. There was no time limit on it, so they can stay there as long as they needed to, but they had a place that they could call home. And I believe that to be, a really big deal. So, any questions?
What, could you expand a little bit more on the trash?
So the trash, okay, so when I say trash, I have a garage at my house that I can't walk through.
Okay.
They don't have garage there, but they have to have stuff. Because 5 years down the road, you never know if you're going to need those chunks of iron to be able to create this, that, and the other thing, or whatever they believe that they need at the time. I did not have the capacity to be able to monitor what was coming in and out, but we do have, what are those cameras called?
Block camera.
We have flock cameras. So we got to watch citizens of Sutherland pulling up to the gate and dumping off all of their garbage, and people filtering through it and collecting it. And since I got those 10 by 20 carports, like I said, these people are amazing that live on the streets. They know how to do everything. They closed it up so you couldn't see in there, wall to wall stuff. We had 3 fires, no fatalities in the fires, but a lot of it was because they had so much stuff in those buildings, and I was not able to monitor it.
So we're not talking then, and that's good to know, because we weren't talking about just put a dumpster out there and people could throw their paper and trash stuff, but these were people that were saving.
Saving. Yes, it wasn't filth.
Gotcha.
It was saving. We had a 3 yard dumpster out there all the time, one of those big old yarders that's whatever, half the size of this room. And there was one person on that council, the governing council, that was in charge of sanitation. So we would fill that dumpster up. I don't know what, once a month, something like that. But we had 42 people out there. And when we had water out there, everybody was complaining like, your water bill was $900. I go, there's 43 people out here. They need water. You have two bathrooms for 43 people. They're going to need to be dumped more than once a week. So they brought 5 porta potties and we leveled it out where we could do it like once a week. But we had specific challenges that we had to go. But the garbage was something that was collecting. It was like they were doing stuff with it.
And now that you've learned that lesson, how would you have some ideas on how you would have managed that differently if you had known ahead of time?
Yeah, if I would have known that situation, I would have worked really, really hard on better boundaries. Because not only does it make it really, really hard to impose their rules, but it burns you out because you want to help them. And that was probably the most significant burnout I've ever faced because I wanted to help so much and I couldn't because it was their behaviors that was causing all of the backlash. So I couldn't clean it up and I couldn't impose the rules mainly because I wanted to make sure they had what they needed, whatever they believed it to be.
And then, having worked with residents who come in off the street, I had quite a few quarters that came in and they need everything. And it's not, everything there is, I need this. I mean, it's a piece of paper, but I need this piece of paper. And just being able to, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of really, really working with these individuals at a really high significant rate.
And consistent work with it.
Absolutely. Oh, I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that if each person, and you want it to be equitable, so
Yeah.
each person only had a certain amount of storage space.
Right.
Would that have been, would you have been able to enforce that? Or would they have been able to enforce that among themselves?
So a couple was able to have a 10 by 20 shot and a single person was to have a 10 by 10, kind of like what Roseburg is doing right now. It would have been wonderful if I was able to be consistent in letting people know this is what you have. Anything outside of this would end up not being. But I didn't have the capacity to be able to do that work. And we were running on the backs of volunteers. My volunteers were in their 80s.
So that would be something to keep in mind going forward, that is a very, very potential likely problem.
Yeah.
And to know about it ahead of time so that some steps could be taken.
Well, I'd like to, but in order for time and stuff, I want to take questions right now, but after the questions, I want to be able to talk about what I believe is probably the best way after our experience. So what was your question?
But so having worked with, we had the rules and stuff that we had to act on the table in, and it was a volunteer-based self-ran program as well. You mentioned the 18 as being the sweet spot. That was the same with us.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as you got above that 22 mark, 18 was sweet and 8 to 22 was pushing it. Anything above that, it was chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you construct it so that that's where you want to be?
You don't exceed that number.
So how would you convince, because we're running into a concentration camp. Everybody wants to put everybody there and build the walls tall enough so nobody can see anything. How would you convince and get the social equity that you need in order to get that?
It comes with people. So 18 people was the sweet spot for me because I'm one person. And if you had more people to do the work, like two people, then you should be able to take on more people. You should be able to. However, in this instance, when you have a community in a square confined area, almost like a concentration camp, which it's not supposed to be a concentration camp, but it looks like one. There's barbed wire around it and everything. But those people have to be able to get along. Okay, that's why you and historically in Roseburg, before they created um, the time, place, and manner. That's why there were so many different locations in Roseburg, is because there were certain people that liked living with certain people.
Right.
You had the Duck Pond crew, you had the people living down by Walmart and Evergreen, you had the people that were over at the Point, you had people out at Freedom Camp, you had people over at Maselli, okay? You had the people that had certain likings to specific substance uses over here because they were able to work together. You had other ones that didn't like these people that did this stuff over here. That's their community.
They're self-regulating.
Absolutely. It may look like chaos, but they have their group. That's their support group. They don't got mom and dad. They don't got brothers and sisters, aunts, whatever. They have their people, even though they're people steal from each other. That's their people. It's just
Well, Mary and I did a lot of outreach during COVID, and COVID is really where it's because that there was not that stability. COVID caused stability with people living in these groups because otherwise they were swept and moved constantly. So they couldn't move anybody during the initial stages of COVID. And Mary and I were one of the few people going out, and so was Wayne. And that's what the homeless people told us, that structure that, their people, oh, well, they're not allowed over here. They got to go over there. And that, I think that model works. The one, I was a little bit involved with Hastings Village because Housing for Umpqua can teach self-governance. It's one of the skill sets we have. And, and we kind of tried to do that. I think the stage that we got pulled in, it was with these huge amounts of people.
Yeah.
And if it had been done at the very get-go, if that structure had been that way, but you find a problem with authoritarianism from the group, okay?
From the group.
Right, from the group, from the other people, and oh, well, and then allegations are picking on me and that kind of stuff.
They're the enforcers.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That actually is what I walked into
We had a guy that was walking around with a badge.
Yeah.
He thought he was the sheriff of the camp, but I mean, the thing about that was it was literally like people had a certain way of how they wanted to be able to run these things, but they have never had power before.
Right.
And if Betsy and I were to be able to get in there sooner and mentor the conversations and show them a line of governance where they could still be equitable and still help each other, I think those things would have definitely been different. Because then they would have had the power and the supporting backing to be able to tell their friends, like, hey, you got stuff outside of your place. You need to pick that up. But they didn't want to get their friends in trouble, so it was,
Octavia, you had your mic unmuted and I muted you because you could hear the background noise. Did you want to ask a question or make a comment?
I want to
Unmuted. Yeah.
ask him. I guess I was a little confused, Dory. Were you saying that the regular citizens of Southern were dumping their trash at or near Hastings Village? And if that's
yeah,
the
right through.
case, and if that's the case, what could be done about that?
Well, what happened is the Sutherland PD started monitoring it. They did put a sign out there that said no dumping. And that did deter some people. But once a couple people were asked by the local PD to stop doing that, word got out and they stopped doing it completely. Some of it was good, like dumping off
They could use it. I mean,
firewood. There were so many loads of firewood because we didn't have heat. It was a good thing. But now they don't allow people to have fires in there. And like I said, we did have 3 fires. They were not good fires. They were definitely fires. And I was on the fire department at that time. They were good ones. But if somebody did have a fire and they lost all their stuff, Uncle Hart would take that couple, they would put them up in a hotel. I would come in with an end loader that the city paid for I would clean up all of the stuff, get them set up with a brand new tent and everything, and move them back in. So we were able to do that, luckily, and that was on the backs of local citizens donating money.
Yep. How would you do it for?
It was just a second. I apologize. When it comes to the first fire, somebody put a cordless drill on top of a wood stove, and the lithium battery exploded. Another one was somebody was filling gas into a generator while the generator was running. It started a fire. I can't remember what the third one was.
Octavia.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering if there's any way to take preventative measures from not nice people dumping their regular trash or people that aren't homeless.
Yeah, I guess hindsight is 2020. And I'm going to tell you right now, like I said to Larry before, I'm a cart before the horse guy, always been. I figure we can fix those small details later. But I'll tell you, anything that has to do with homelessness, if people were to do the groundwork, set up a plan with policy, put all the partners in place, and make sure that present is just beautiful before they open it, you're going to get a hell of a lot more traction than I did. Because I tried to do everything on nothing. The people were already there when I started building this. You really got to get it all looking all pretty first and then bring the people there. That's what I found out. But it's already after 7. So I want to give my pitch before everybody else jumps in with their ideas. After all of this stuff, I'm not saying that I'm an expert because I'm always learning. And as soon as I learn something, as soon as I think I know something, then I'm wrong. But I have found out through all of this stuff that the best thing that we can do to be able to help in any city in Douglas County or any county or city in the United States is to create more housing and make it so it's permanent and supportive. We're not going to be able to do that, I believe, in this certain political climate. So I'm going to be a huge advocate for anything that is semi-transitional with appropriate supports and working with agencies that do have more permanent housing and making sure that we can make those smooth transitions happen. So if I hear again that there's 100 beds at the Mission not being filled, that upsets me. If there is a motel that doesn't have anybody in it that could be used as like a SRO, a single room occupancy that we might be able to lease to be able to get people in a semi situation where we can dump all our love into them through coordinated response, either by organizations that I represent or other people represent. I would love to be able to do that and then work on getting them into something more permanent with permanent supports. But those are the things that I would like to go on. I'm not a big fan right now of tents. I am a big fan of places where people can be as long as it's not tents, because tents are not designed for Oregon weather, but micro shelters are. And micro shelters being anything not 8 by 8, but something that is 10 by 12, and then something that is a little bit more where it could have a bathroom or a hot plate that they can cook on, and then something that's a little bit more. I like the idea of transition with appropriate supports. That's what I'm advocating for, personally.
Well, the one problem with transition that you described, and we've talked about this before, is it kind of seems like you have to be good enough to get to the next place.
Yep.
So housing for Umpqua is about you need to be housed. And what's missing are the supports. We live in a subsidized housing unit, low income, senior and disabilities. We've counted 5 people that in the last 6-8 months have been evicted from the apartment building we live in because they have mental health issues and no one was there to help make sure they didn't get evicted. And that's the reality. That's been the reality that I have seen in the 10 years we've actually lived there. This last year has been even worse. And so there's not resident service managers like Ruth because at one point, she can out herself now. If there was a problem her employer was going to still focus on, she'd give me a call. So we were able to actually stop people who had hoarding problems and severe, at least delay it to see if we could get more supports. And the other thing is, where are those real supports that are out there for people? So those things have to be addressed. Wayne has had a couple of other great experiences that I'd actually like you to talk about at some other time. But but the reality is, in 1980s, when, my whole thing was absolutely housing, 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 the reality of the world has proven they might even need tents. And I really did not know that I would ever say that because the reality is that was abhorrent to me. And I'll tell you a little story. When I lived in Long Beach and was running an advocacy organization, some dude came to me about container housing. And I said, get out of here.
I never thought I'd be building.
This is in the 80s in Long Beach, California. No way, get out. House people in shipping containers. What are you, mad? Now I would take them.
Yeah.
But I would also take tents, because the thing we're trying to advocate is, even at Deer Creek Park, leave them there and quit this inhumane treatment of homeless people. That really is now, and that's sickening that that's the number one thing that needs to be solved. Now, Dane was on our podcast last night and indicated the homeless commission has said one porta potty for every 10 people. We have 300 that they're willing to do that, right? Isn't that what you heard? That's what they're saying at the end. And I did not listen to the homeless commission. Quite frankly, I'm done wasting my time doing that stuff. But if that were something they would do, if that is what they're going to do, that's probably a decent ratio if you want sanitation. We have feces at Deer Creek Park. I mean, you know where their toilet is? It's the bushes between the railroad tracks and where they're living. And when it rains and it's on a downhill slide, no wonder there's E. coli and cellulitis, which people in the medical field have told me is coming in to see them. So
we advocated in 2018 for porta potties.
oh yeah,
We all did.
yeah.
And
I still have the brochures.
yeah, we were told no.
Place to go.
Yeah, a place to go. And it's not just people on the streets, but the issue is we did get something passed through H-Tag. We had 4 porta potties around town, and they were just destroyed all the time. They were just destroyed. And that really puts a burden. I know it might not be, but it was like they were always destroyed. And that kind of message just it hurt us, because it's not just people on the streets that need to go to the bathroom. There's no public toilets downtown.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the final straw was actually the last time the porta potty in the parking lot across from the Rose where we live was set on fire at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's when UCAN said we're out.
Yeah.
Because it had been set on fire at least once before.
Yeah.
So the problem is, Julie. Oh yeah, Ed, you'd watch them pull out with us. Dump.
Could they be monitored?
Yeah.
Cameras?
Well, that's the discussion we had before it became about flocks, which I'm not pro cameras, but you're right. No. And the other thing, when we've had conversations with the people who are living at Deer Creek, which is what that park is called, it's not the point.
Right.
So as far as the blocks cameras go in Roseburg, they're only at the entrances of the city. So they're not throughout the city. They're only at out on Diamond Lake, out on Highway 99. They can't have any of them next to the interstate. So it's like going out to Melrose. Just once you start to leave the city is where you'll find them.
Well, and I don't really know. I think I know what about you're talking about those kind of cameras. I've been reading a little bit about it, but I'm talking more about
just a security camera.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a simple
Yeah.
security date.
yes.
That's live streamed to a port. Yes.
We
Yes.
have an at Eagle Park downtown, but we don't have them. I think we may have some at some of the other parks,
But going back to my comment, I just want to make it clear that housing, permanent supportive housing, is the way to go. I just need something now, and unfortunately, with the way that our people interact with each other in Douglas County, I feel as if, and this is not fact, this is feeling, I feel as if they would more than be grateful than to allow people to have something with supports that people can see that there is some movement forward and some people working. So that's why I believe that Grants Pass even put through Bernie's model down there is because it had that whatever working component with it. I feel as if having something transitional with appropriate supports, meaning that people are coming to the table to help people, I think that would be able to stick, even though I know that permanent supportive housing is the key. Yeah. Yeah. So
That's the ultimate goal.
Yes.
In my opinion, anyway, that is the ultimate goal, but there has to be something
Now,
before that. Yes, exactly.
it's really that urgency. It really is like a third world country over there. I don't even like going there.
I'm not an advocate of tents, but is a tent better than nothing?
Yeah.
It's kind of
Sadly, that is where we are
Right.
right now.
right.
on the flip side, Umpqua Hart got a grant from Umpqua Health Alliance in 2024 for, I can't remember, I think it was like 30 grand to buy tents, tarps, and sleeping bags. And for a year and a half, we supplied Douglas County with all of those things. And we did a good job. We partnered with DHS, we partnered with Servants of Christ, and then we partnered with Hadco and I don't know, a couple other people, and we were able to distribute these things out. Now, Umpqua Health Alliance says that from OHA, they're no longer going to be able to give out monies that go specifically towards the purchases of tents, tarps, and sleeping bags.
There's been a lot of push to get the different agencies not to be providing those. So it's more, I'm not a city councilor tonight, but so it's more to make sure that because they're throwing so many away. And so many are getting.
But the city's throwing them away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The city's policy.
Yeah.
Like that. Throwing them
Yeah.
away.
So, yeah, I have to be very careful, but
It's different
It's-
because in
yeah.
2016 to 2018, when working with UCAN, they would put out $78,000 in tents, tarps, and sleeping bags. So it used to be a lot more that we put away.
yeah.
I don't know if that's good.
Well, those things from UCAN housing for some because nobody was out during the pandemic, and we said, "We're old ladies, we'll go do it." Well, it was outside for
Yeah.
and we got the bulk of that, but they bought the things and they didn't get thrown away because people were stable. Right?
We also put in a disclaimer that said that they cannot, because I helped you with that. We put a disclaimer in there that said that you cannot camp anywhere on city property.
Right.
So we did try to help.
Well, we told them you can't legally camp.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
But
we just, I feel like we need something more sustainable than tents. But if it is tents, I do believe that if we can establish, and this goes back to our original conversation, establishing a place where people can be so we can help the folks, that's going to be.
But how do we get the community buy-in? Because that's the piece that we don't have. We have the NIMBYism and
It's the beautiful thing about that is it's all in the money and the numbers. If somebody was able to take the time to compilate, like compute or whatever the word you want to use, the amount of emergency room visits associated with homelessness, the amount of times the police are called out because of whatever people believe to be homeless crime, homeless vandalism, homeless whatever, or public indecency, or having fire come out because of illnesses related to homelessness, like the amount of accidental overdoses that, and then fires, and then illegal cooking, those kind of things. If they were to really take time and look at the amount of dollars that we are spending in these different costs associated with emergency services, you can see that it's kind of like a wash of doing something good for folks or letting them live the way they are. And depending on where our heart is, we would think that people would want to help people. So you have to show the money.
Any of you guys see Cory Booker's speech today? He was talking about a woman named Mrs. Jones. He had gone into this neighborhood and he was going to help her fix the neighborhood. And she says, tell me what you see in my neighborhood. So he went through and he listed all of the things that were wrong. And she goes, get out of here. She said, you are here to change something that doesn't need to be changed. You're not here to fix the problems of what we're dealing with. You have a vision of what you want, not what we need.
Right, and that's why we need to have folks who are living outside.
We have hope. You have no hope for our
Good point.
community.
That's a
And
great point.
that's what we need to have is the hope. We need to get the other people on board with our vision, the hope.
So that's kind of like, that's a really good point, because one thing that we have never had, we have HTAG, we've got Douglas County Homeless Commission, we got the Roseburg Commission, we got Homeless Solutions, we've got Hastings Solutions, we got all of these different things. If we could come as a unified front, that would speak volumes. We've never been able to do that before.
Well, I'm gonna say initially when HTAG was formed, it actually wouldn't let homeless people join. When they
I wasn't part of that.
when they
Yeah,
finally did, they tried to monitor what they would say because all the agency people at a different level than today was at the table. So there's not that real inclusion. And we have told folks who are living outside about this, but the majority of the people don't live anywhere near here. It's 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
The reality is we're here because this is free. It's a free resource because of what we're doing by the housing authority. So, and Octavia and I have talked about that, the need to, engage folks who are living outside and figuring out a way to do that. Because I have been homeless, totally different situation. When I was homeless 15 years ago, we had a vehicle, we knew where to camp, the forcers loved us, but that's not the same situation that people are living in the city right now at all. And so I can't really speak for that. I don't know how I would survive that when I look at that. That's what made, how could they ever do this? So I think that the ideas that we were floating around when Housing First Umpqua produced our pamphlet on safe ground, that is basically community run, the things you said, right? What you were trying to do with Hastings Village. And that hopefully will look at the buy-in. One of the things that I think is a big deal is not just homeless folks, but I drafted a petition, months ago. Max has got probably most of the petition signatures, but this is actually to stop the sweeps and ask the city of Roseburg to account for all the money they've spent.
We have asked that. Okay, so that was asked for at the last meeting.
Right.
So we will be getting that accounting.
Right. I am not sure. I think that if someone presented to me personally a way that the city could save $500,000 if they had a place for people to be, but it was going to be in the lot next door to me. I don't think that someone would say, I'm willing to give you my piece of property in order to save $500,000. I think the biggest obstacle in Roseburg is finding a place. And what struck me was when you talked about Sutherland, you mentioned that the city manager, he just went ahead and
Did it.
That's Jerry, though.
Yeah.
Jerry's different.
No, I'm just saying that I think that one of the biggest frustrations for me is with the homeless commission is that every time you present a place, good, bad, or indifferent, everybody comes out and says, no, it's too close to this, it's too close to that, it's too close to, and until we have a place, and I don't know how to get the community to buy into
I can,
identifying a place.
I can help you with it. So every piece of property that they wanted to do this stuff on is C3 zoning,
Right.
okay?
Is that commercial?
It's high commercial, yeah, that's the only thing ordinance to be, or zone to be able to do any kind of sheltering, okay? If a nonprofit was to actually stand up and say, I am doing this, they can do it, and it doesn't matter what the
Right.
people say.
That-
But as soon as the city's involved, that's when it gets screwed up.
Okay.
They used to say back in the day, when government gets involved, it all always gets screwed up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like saying that about our government officials, but it really gets gummy when government officials or city officials get into it because there's a lot of bureaucracy with it. But if a nonprofit was to come in and say, this is what we're doing, they can't do anything about it. And there is also a House Bill 2021, I think it is, where you can override, if it's for homelessness, you can override any zoning to be able to do what you want.
Yeah, you can. And that's, there actually is a way, there's not a will. And there's no obstruction for the city actually getting those properties that were presented to them. They legally can do it and tell their constituents, we legally can do this, we need to do this, and we're gonna do it. We don't have people in the city council who will do that.
Okay.
And that's
It's,
that's where it is.
there are some people that serve, there's some people that really like their job. That's
So
with anything though.
Larry asked, what is that? Expressing comprehensive plan will be supported by funding. How do we get the county and cities to trust each other and start working together? Okay, Larry, if we could answer that, we'd have most things solved.
They did, the county did on last Wednesday, they did set a proclamation that they are going to be working on it because they are tired of seeing.
Oh, Betsy, we need to get a hold of somebody.
Well, somebody needs to get a hold of somebody to get Great Oaks Park.
I've been having this conversation. Well, I'm gonna have those conversations again, but another thing that Umpqua Heart has done, and Housing First Umpqua has been part of this. We've been able to house 5 different families in RVs, homeless families. So we take RVs on donation. We give a tax receipt for that because we are a 501(c)(3), and me having a very huge presence in the RV community, I tend to fix them up and make them that they're livable and people can live with them. So I currently have one in my yard right now that I will be updating to be able to give to a homeless family. But we were able to house a homeless lady and her 8-year-old child. And then last year we were able to house a family of 4 in an RV, and then we did 2 other ones before. So that's something that Umpqua Heart is still really looking for, is people to donate RVs, that everything works.
Yeah, that was a challenge, but for us, we quit asking soon after getting a really killer RV because there was no place for them to go.
That's
Yeah.
what I went. So
That's
fixed up.
right. No, because there's
Well-
on most commercial RV parks, it's a 10-year limit, right?
Yeah, there's some
Some
that,
that will let you in
A 10-year.
on the age of your RV.
Oh.
yeah, so anything, it's actually, a lot of them is like, you can't have anything older than 2006. But now they're changing it, that they can't be older than 2010. So that's $10,000 rig rate.
And we had one donated to us that was 30 years old, but it was given to us by the people who bought it brand new. They took care of it, and we could not find any place that would take it and it was in excellent condition. We were lucky the person that was living outside in their car could do fire watch, and so we ended up being able to give it to that person to do that.
That one lady,
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah. And so the problem is, and one of the things, the community village in Austin, Texas, I would encourage anybody to Google it. They actually have one of the best models that they did, which started out as an RV park, getting people off the street.
What was the
in
book
Austin.
they wrote for
I
it?
can't remember.
Yeah, it was like homeless, but it crossed out the less that it was home.
Yes, yeah.
I read it, yeah.
And so now they have, 22 something acres in Austin, Texas, where the community has come help build tiny homes, and has that transition, even the tent camps that he's talking about.
Community
community first instead of housing first. It's community first, because that really comes the crux of how you're gonna solve that problem. Is people and integrating back into community, because they don't really see us as very friendly, and they've got damn good reasons.
Yeah. Why do you need to shower? Why do you need to do dishes? You know, those kind of things. It's all mentorship, getting people to that next level.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of human energy to do that, honestly. And that can be a costly bill, as you well know, coming out of human service industry.
But I've seen it work.
Yes,
I'm telling you, peer mentorship is one of the best things in the world because that hand holding goes a long way. Going right to the person's house.
Betsy and Betsy and Wayne, I keep thinking about the models here. You've expressed or shared a really great model tonight, and I think there are probably others around the country. And I'm wondering, how do we approach the county and the city as an entity if we had like 5 models that we kind of packaged in a similar format to appear, present them to the council and present them to the commissioners. And I think all of them will point out just what you did about the personal one-on-one contact. I think they'll all show that, and I think that will be a bridge to funding. But we do need a comprehensive plan. It's got to start first with prevention, as was discussed earlier, and have an emergency squad. If somebody's going to lose their home and be foreclosed on, are there 5 people in the community that could get together as an emergency squad and stop that procedure? But anyway, I guess I'm just thinking about a bigger, longer range plan here. We seem to be muddling around a lot with things in the middle. And I'm wondering, what's the big vision? To have everybody 100% housed? If that's a vision and we agree upon that, then amount of thinking and energy and finances should be put toward that vision. If our vision is tents, that's where it stops. If our vision is storage containers, that's where it stops. But I would like to see us going for something higher and starting earlier.
well, I agree as far as this group. I think our goal has to be housing. That's one of it.
Well,
Octavia?
You're talking about you're talking about how do you present that to the city council? For me, I think the best way to do that is to show them how much money it would save them, and and how each model would save them money, and how much money it would save them, because I think people respond to dollar bills, not emotions, unfortunately.
So what I would share with you then, Octavia, is the idea. If we say this group right here was to do some strategic planning, and if it's on the preventative side or the beginning side, like Larry was talking about, and if we want to go, Octavia, like you're saying, like show me the money, then I would strongly suggest getting a plan together, going after share funds to be able to get the money to be able to pay somebody to collect that data, to be able to support a plan that this group could put out there. And when it comes to Larry, what you were talking about when it comes to models around the US, the city of Roseburg did a lot of background work on looking at different models. And the ones that I have been looking at, like for a while now, was the one out of Texas as my first one. The second one came around in 2016 with community support shelters. And then there was Road Retreat that they looked at. What's the one out of Eugene that we looked at? With that one used to be a pastor.
Yes, I can't remember the name.
There was another one out of Eugene.
There's a community supported shelters who's actually going to come talk to us. And
there's another one. And then St. Vincent de Paul has one in Eugene also.
Yes.
And then there was another one that was in California that we looked at in LA. But there are models that the city of Roseburg liked. What we couldn't find was an organization to take us under their wing to make it happen because they didn't have the capacity to show us their complete model and show us how to do it.
In the process of doing it, but not.
Yeah, all of when we did the work, it was like they were all in the building phase and they weren't able to help us with any of that stuff. And then Walla Walla was another one. Walla Walla, Washington was another group that did very good work.
So now with the time that's passed, these would actually be projects that have been completed and have people.
And are working.
Yeah.
And actually, because of this, one of the directors of the community supported shelters in Eugene reached out to me and said, hey, I'd be willing to come and talk to you about what our experience is.
Have you heard of its event? I just sent the article to Shelley, Homeless Commission, Cleveland Commons.
Is that the one you were going to go to? In Bend?
That's Redmond.
Oh, it's Redmond.
It was still built by Hayden Homes. They just opened it last year.
No, the one that they were due, the one that I was going to check out was one that they had a safe ground that was being done with some of the churches for car camping. And then they were getting together a yurt site that they were bringing in from, I think, Cottage Grove, the yurts.
Oh, yeah.
So they're getting there set up, but they were still waiting. They were still looking for that organization to oversee them and to get to manage it.
This one, Cleveland Commons, it was studio and 1-bedroom apartments. I think there were 33 units. And the reason I liked the article was because it also talked about the good and the things that failed or that they were having problems with. It's still ongoing. People are still living there, but some of the problems did come. A lot of it could probably be solved with some of the mentoring you're talking about, because one of the people that they featured obviously had anger management problems. So he was having some difficulty getting along with the other people, and so it talked about, but anyway, the reason I liked this particular article was because it did lay out where they got their funding and how it was spent and ongoing. So it talked about some of the financial part that is always an issue.
Yeah.
So that was just one that I came across, but I'm definitely interested. But I knew that the city had looked a while ago at different projects, but yeah, they just hadn't been running long enough to really provide the kind of information that we needed.
Right.
Well, the individual organizations didn't have the capacity to come in here and run it for Roseburg.
But
Because that's what happened. And we actually had two people from, actually they worked for the same group with the pastor, I can't remember his name, that they were all setting their stuff up, right? So they had already gotten the grant and they were working on it. And there are some great models. I mean, a lot of in the one with the pastor, the community college building program actually came and built structures, right? So those partnerships, cut the cost that had happened. So there are people that we can get that information from. And I want to say just this issue has had a lot of heavy, really smart people working in it nationwide for decades.
Yeah.
And I don't just make up the shit I talk about. I rely upon those people, and I'm actually going to try to have one of them who's in from Western Regional Advocacy Project, who's been doing this since the 80s, and I'm going to Paul Bowden. I'm going to have a conversation with him this week and try to talk him into coming here and actually doing a bigger live thing.
He's dynamic.
He is, and very fun to watch. But he's also Western Regional Advocacy Project. And they did the historic study of the fall of affordable housing. And so they've done that, but there's a National Housing Law Project, the homeless, National Center for Homelessness.
House keys, not handcuffs.
There's all kinds of national groups that have been doing this so on. We don't have to reinvent a wheel, right? And particularly with these smaller projects. And I think we need to get ourselves around the right for people to have a place to be, the sanitation issue, the funding issue, so what are these things that we can appeal to that broader audience? Because you're absolutely right. I don't, poor people have historically been victimized by putting places where they are, right? And the problem is that if you don't have a way for that to be integrated into the community, where people are really part of the community, it's going to be a problem. And so I would advocate not one place with 100 and some people, Even Deer Creek has its problems because there are so many people there. But those smaller groups. And when we started 3 or 4 years ago, looking at the safe ground and starting to build it out, I have a spreadsheet and I can share it with everybody. You start seeing where the property the city has right now. They got a parking lot across from me that has no cars in it. They could have tents right there right now. They got a parking lot a block away that has nothing in it. They could have tents right now. Oh, the U-Haul, where the parking lot where the U-Haul is, that's city parking. It has electricity and water.
We had a person that lived in one for a while. In a U-Haul till 3 in the morning.
Well, I'm not saying that the U-Haul, I'm saying that property is city property.
Well, I'm sorry, in December, in one of the December meetings, I don't remember if it was city council or the homeless commission meeting, but at that time, they said that they were going to identify city-owned properties.
Yeah.
And they had a great big long discussion, probably was the council, but about what they were looking for, what it could, more than the council be on it. Anyway, they went around and round and round ad nauseum, but they finally said that they were going to do that. I've never seen anything come out of that.
They sent the paperwork out to all of the counselors, but that's as far as it went.
And there's no one, that's
So where's
what I
that
find
property?
incredible is that we have the city that knows what properties the city owns. There's no one in our city that knows what properties.
Oh,
the
it
city
does.
owns.
I did a map search on Google. Okay,
I did it too.
you know, you do an assessor and a map search, and you know where every property owned in the city of Roseburg,
And in fact,
and it's online.
okay, and they, so I think Chris Boyce had provided something similar.
When we did it, we identified 16 different properties.
Yeah.
Well,
We also looked at the county.
individually to Nikki individually, and she said no to every one of them because of this, no because of this, no because of this. Every one of them.
Great city man. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that Ruth and I were talking about, and we've talked about, is the VA campus. There, you know, to places for people could be, there could be a tent camp in at the VA hospital for veterans. LA VA did it. Okay, so and other VAs across the country have done it. So that should be something, and we've already gotten somebody who's a veteran who's willing to help coordinate making that connection with the VA to try to see if they will put something up, you know.
So when it comes to that, then once this group is like really, really solid, it might be in that best interest to have a representative from this group to go to the workshop for the city to represent this group's ideals once we get those things kind of ironed out. And then making sure we have a person that's a representative on HTAG too. If HTAG continues to go, HTAG might just fall into this. Who knows? You know, it all depends on timing, but it should have representation at the different meetings. So at least, you know, what we're talking about here can be represented over there.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that just because the city manager says no, I think that should be public information. I mean, what do the rest of us think? I mean, not just us, I mean, the community.
Just to give you an idea of one of the properties that everybody keeps bringing up again and again. There's right across from Lowe's, there's that big grass.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Coming
that's a
after that.
wetland, but it's also in the airplane crash zone. So it may not behoove us to put homeless camp and then have an airplane.
Right.
So that is the main reason for that one, and it continuously gets brought up again and again and again, and it's because of the federal guidelines, it's never gonna happen. But those are the things that the city does not know, that the general population does not know. There are valid reasons, laws, and different things that are gonna keep that from happening.
Right.
I remember the discussion about that when the former recorder was actually the city man, was on the city council. And the statement that they made, and they did with the contracts with the airports, right, is you can't build anything permanent. And I'm a person who listens to the nuance of language.
Yeah.
Okay.
I built non-permanent things many times.
So the reality is a short term, you know, and when's the last time there was a plane crash here? I've been here 35 years.
Never seen one.
So yeah.
Started the runways.
You could get hit if you're on that, on Edenbauer on the highway, right?
So one of the things that they're doing is as the city, as the buildings like over across going towards Garden Valley is within, I think it's 1,000 feet of the airports, as those properties come available or have to be torn down, if they're torn down, the property will not be sold. It'll be
For the airport.
it will be considered for the craft zone for the airport. So that all of that is, that whole neighborhood's gonna go away eventually.
Or the airport could.
I don't know why they're not out what sticks in there. I don't know.
What do they
I
use it
know.
for? Anyway, so where do we go from here? We had some assignments from our last meeting, and there's a kind of handout that we drafted for the inauguration meeting. That's really kind of where this concept kind of came from, if you want us over there. There's a petition here for the city, if you want to sign it, to ask them to tell us where they spend all the money.
Do you have to live in the city to sign it?
No, not in my opinion. And it's not a formal legal petition anyway, so that legally it doesn't matter. But there, I think that we had discussed, and for one, I did reach out to, when you say that there's a lot of people who have data, Larry, it was a lot of data available, readily available, and I don't want to make this political until the recent administration came out. So things like the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, which was a federal agency that was created under the second Bush administration, there's nothing on their website that's been updated in 2025. So all of the data, so even when I start to look at it, because I want to cite something, then I go, dang, is it still the same thing? Because they're not updating that stuff. So I'm not sure that the federal government right here is going to be a source. I'm trying to, when I contacted the DHS person, Department of Human Services, as opposed to the Department of Homeland Security. It's the Department of Human Services. They said locally they don't track that data. You have to go to the state DHS, and they get their data of families that are that are homeless from point in time count data. They don't use it they don't.
So the best place that I've been able to find the family data is through the Department of Education.
Let me ask a question about primary research in this case and bringing the Ford Foundation into it. I know a lot of you have experience with foundations and and their structure, and they got a lot of really great people in there. And I guess the idea is that maybe they could help facilitate a plan here or facilitate an approach to package something to present to the commissioners and to the councils.
We could get a technical assistance grant from the Ford Family Foundation to help create that, and get that information together.
We'll give us a facilitator,
Right.
do a strategic plan for 10 grand.
Sure. I can write the grant. Sure.
We've done enough of them. Yeah. That would be super helpful. That would be helpful.
I think if that helps other people, I think that's a great idea.
Well, I'd have to go through your organization.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a great idea. I just don't know that we need strategic planning in the same sense. If you go through, if you develop concepts, say this is what we should be doing. I'm not sure that adding that strategic planning process that people formally go through, and I've been through way too many in my life, that they actually get you an outcome, particularly in this human service realm. I've seen too many strategic plans. Well, you're not doing this, you're doing this. You're doing this.
I think this component can help us get that whole piece as opposed to and collaborating and connecting the different agencies together.
Well, I think it could help even this group grow, because just because I have that experience and knowledge and think it's maybe going to be a waste of time, I'm willing to waste people's time. Okay.
Yeah, but on the flip side, Ford Family Foundation is totally invested in child homelessness. Right?
So
if we were to do this, they would be able to take the information we get from here and add it to what they're doing over there.
Absolutely.
And it makes it more consistent.
Yeah.
I'm good information. Say that DHS could not provide
The number of families who are homeless
Here?
locally, that's what she
Okay.
told me. I have to get it in the state.
That's not.
Well,
I know, that's what they told you.
You have to do a letter.
You have to do more than that.
It's a request letter or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's not fair.
So
Folks,
that's where you're going to help us with, that piece of getting that information. Because that's what we need.
Well, we can
well,
get the
good.
numbers for the first Thursday too, though.
Well, and you can get them from the state, but I'm just saying that locally, they could provide that.
I would assume.
I got some good
getting
news for you. The CEO over there is from Minnesota, and she previously worked with the McKnight Foundation, I believe, which is 3M, and I was involved with one of their so-called subsidiaries, an initiative foundation that they put together. Anyway, the point is that they're really into planning, they're really into organization, and when I mentioned primary research, because as Betsy was saying, a lot of things out there are frozen or they're outdated, and people's eyes glaze over when you talk about research from Texas and Illinois and Indiana. If they were able to fund some primary research that involves the community people and the homeless people and the agencies, and I'm not talking about something that's going to happen in 2 months. This is a year, at least a year-long process. But at the end of it, everybody, hopefully there's consensus. And when you have consensus, then when you have a good plan, when you have a dream, people will fund your dream. And but it's got to be put together so that it's a trusted dream.
That's that. You're right. Well, get everybody together. You bring the hot dish, I'll bring the pasties, and we'll be good.
Yeah,
All right, so
that's it. And you know what? No, let me back up because what you just said is exactly what the Initiative Foundation taught. I learned through them. Food is at the center of it. Each one of these events, these gatherings of strategic planning, whether it was 30 people or 300, food was the major component that people gather around. We've been doing it since the caveman days.
like round tables or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna be real honest. My days of providing food for people in groups is long. So
I do it every other-
delegate that to somebody else.
We have to have a vegan option.
Yes.
That's why we got to partner with Thrive.
There you go.
Thrive Alphabet, right?
So, what other reports do we have from last time? Do we?
I ran into brick walls. Nobody calling back.
So, would it be helpful if I sent everybody the spreadsheet and the kind of stuff and the mapping and stuff that we did for Safe Ground? And then people can start doing their own research. It's really Google Map search. This is, not, it's easy enough to learn for most people, right? It's not some sophisticated GIS mapping program, right?
Wayne, is Chief McVeigh still over at Adapt?
He's the director of housing.
Okay, so he would be in charge of the complexes over on Stevens Street.
Yes. They are going through a remod right now, and I don't believe anybody is living there. But people are living at Progress Point, which is the one by the senior center. They have people living in that one. That one's for people waiting for a bed over at Crossroads. Gene has said publicly many times that they will be breaking ground for their inpatient lodge this year. And by next year, this time, they will have 120 units of permanent supportive housing in Green. They partnered with a developer that has since adapted as a culturally, linguistically appropriate company that for-profit developers need to have that in order to develop low-income housing. So they're going to give that to Adapt after they develop it. They take the development fees and they give the building over to Adapt.
The senior complex that was there on Kelly's Corner.
It's that hotel.
A chunk of land that NeighborWorks used to own over by the old family church between the fire department. NeighborWorks sold it because it was deemed a wetland. For some reason, they could build on it.
Well, I'm talking about that there is a complex that was built for senior living up on the hill right there at Kelly.
They're not, the DAP doesn't have that. That went bankrupt. That is just sitting there.
So that would be. thing.
That is it's got a roof on it and all the walls. It's just lost all the funding. So if you could find a way to get that donated, that would be a really cool project.
What's the name of it?
Talk to Erica. I already talked to her about it. I wanted to steal Forest Glen with you. We got turned out.
All right, so does anybody else have any comments or questions? We're gonna do this again in 2 weeks, and if you don't like that schedule, blame her.
Yeah.
Okay?
Her is risk.
I just meant twice a month, so do we have a particular topic we want to have somebody come talk to us about? That's the other thing I'd appreciate.
The next one, because you're talking about supportive community shelters
Yeah,
or community
supportive shelters, yeah, I'll see if I can get her to be, if that works for
Nice
us.
to have one more talk that same day so you can have a couple.
Well, the guy from, if I could only remember the pastor's name, I actually have an email for him, something, that's another option, because he's still running it, and they're actually building out housing now, so he's actually a pretty dynamic person. And so I will reach out to them and see if both of them, and they can come online, obviously, if we don't want to be here. So, all right, you guys, anybody online? Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Betsy. Very good. Great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Right.
Is there gonna be any way that the city council in Roseburg's gonna agree on something?